Hey, I've got a solution that creates more shitty B2B content. Don't worry, we've already got that covered.
Yeah.
Welcome
exactly
to B2B.
Right. That's right. That's right.
Hello and welcome to episode 205 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. It's Saturday the 17th of February. Hope you've had a good week and you are well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rockstar, but I'm a three-time CMO and trusted marketing advisor, and with the help of my guests and chums, share the marketing street knowledge that I hope will inspire your inner rockstar. Come say hello. You can find links to me and my guests in the show notes at rockstarcmo.com or on LinkedIn at Rockstar CMO, and we are proud members of the Marketing Podcast Network. This week in the Marketing Studio, Jeff Clark and I will be discussing some new data on the B2B marketing time lag from Dreamdata, and in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar, I'll join Robert Rose, who over a cocktail returns to the topic of content strategy and AI. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the Boys Club of Advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe.
Right, it's time to check in with our resident strategy advisor, former Forrester Research Director, Jeff Clark, in the Rockstar CMO Marketing Studio.
Welcome, Ian, to the Rockstar CMO studio.
Thank you, Jeff. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I have a sunny, crisp, cold winter day here in New England, and so this time of year, as the sun is out longer and it's a little brighter, it's good because here in the U.S. we have this thing about this groundhog that comes out of the hole and says that spring's coming sooner, which he said was going to become soon this year. So
Splendid.
It makes us long for the spring weather.
Splendid. And you just had Super Bowl weekend as well, haven't you? So that's an indication of the end of the winter, I guess, isn't it? Yeah. Were you are you an American football fan? Were you rooting for either of the teams?
I hate to admit this to our audience, but no, I did not watch the Super Bowl. We cut the cable, and so we watch paid services that we have, and for any of the content we want to watch. And when I found out that it's like I'd have to pay extra to watch the Super Bowl, I was like, it's not any of the teams that I would be feel like obliged to root for. So.
I think when we were in America, I think New England Patriots won it one year, didn't they? I think a few years ago.
Well, they won it many years.
Yeah, many years.
I think it was like seven Super Bowls.
Yeah,
in over a couple decades, and so and I grew up. I mean, not to go too far down this rat hole, but I grew up in Chicago. I was born in Chicago, grew up in Buffalo and Pittsburgh, and live in New England. So I've got at least four hometown teams that I can root for, and usually at least two of them are in the playoffs, and one may make it to the end.
Oh, cool! Which one did you go to university? Which of those towns did you go to university?
Well, in New England.
Normally in New England. Isn't that normally where an American's heart lies? Usually where they went to university in their formative years.
It is. That's a very good. That's very actually. But when I grew up, I mean, a lot of my growing years and starting to get interested in sports and stuff like that was while I was in Pittsburgh. So I'm still a Pittsburgh baseball, football. Hockey fan. There's no basketball team there, so not basketball. But
There
Anyway.
you go. All right,
That's my
off,
story.
We've strayed off of the weather and into sports, which is a new venture for us after all
What's
these
your
episodes.
favorite English Premier League team?
I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before. I'm a Chelsea fan. So I was born in London, not very far from the ground. So I was that was my calling.
My son has become, for God knows what reason, a Everton fan.
Wow.
So he always cheers to make sure they don't get sent down to the league below.
Well, it's going to be tricky for them this year. But cool. Well, splendid. Yeah, and here I forgot. I was going to look up the Fahrenheit level of what we were at today, because we were at 15 degrees centigrade, which is like... It's
toasty.
It was crazy. Yeah, absolutely crazy. So having a freakishly warm day today. Which we all know why, because of global warming and all that kind of good stuff. So anyway, let's talk some marketing, Jeff, now that we are in the marketing studio, not in the sports and weather studio. So this week, and I think we're on a little run here, aren't we, of looking at other people's reports and getting inspired. So this week I came across, or was it last week? I came across a report that I shot over in your direction that was posted on LinkedIn by Jeremy Sacramento, who's the Senior Content Marketing Director at Dreamdata, a B2B customer data platform that I've had Stefan Hederbrandt, who is the co-founder and CMO, on this show. And they posted a blog post about their report that quoted a guy called Dale Harrison. And the premise is this marketing time lag, right? It's the latency between marketing action and revenue recognition. So that was the thing that caught my eye with this report. And there's a bit of a spoiler. So what they noticed is the marketing strategy you're executing in Q1 will hardly influence revenue in Q1. Most of it won't even influence revenue in Q2. Some of it won't even influence revenue this year. And from their report, and the report is called Testing the B2B Marketing Time Lag, only 37% of revenue is impacted within a quarter. It takes 6 months for 50% of the revenue to be impacted. 25% of the revenue impacted by marketing touches will not generate any business before the year is done. And B2B customer journeys are notoriously long and complex. We kind of knew that already, didn't we, Jeff? But
I think so.
But they've got their data, and for that, they're showing that a lot of B2B customer journeys are actually 192 days long on average. So having shot this over in your direction, Jeff, what say you, my friend?
Well, it's like when you hear those statistics, you want to go, "Oh, geez, might as well give up," because it's like whatever we're doing is just like it's going to take so long. But I think there's certainly a couple caveats. One of which, right off the bat, is that they're looking at big aggregate data. Average, journey is 192 days. When you think about a lot of that journey is prior to them engaging you, then that means that the sales cycle is significantly shorter than that. And I think that the caveat I wanted to mention is that this is highly dependent on your length of your sales cycles, and so, if your sales cycle is a quarter or a couple months or something like that, then you've got to adjust. Everything we say today, you got to adjust to figure that in. As a matter of fact, we worked company that we worked at together. They had some products that had really short sales cycles from when they engaged a prospect. It might have been a month. They had also products that a year plus. For an average sales cycle. So. One of the things to think about in terms of how you're reporting on how you're measuring impact, revenue, engagement, stuff like that, is that you need to measure distinctly for the unique time horizon. So don't do what the report did. Not that the report did it wrong, but from your perspective, you want to make sure you're not lumping everything together. You want to say, we've got this business over here where we've got short sales cycles, smaller deal sizes, blah, blah, blah. I want to report on the funnel metrics, et cetera, on that separately from my other business that might be on longer sales cycles.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Plus, also, always with these kinds of reports and these kinds of statistics, and I do like it, and I'll go on to say that in a second, but you've always got to think, what does this actually mean for me and my business, and how is it different, right? It's like any kind of statistics, isn't it? Is it different in my geography? Is it different with my products? Is it different in my category? And I think when you see some of these generalized things, and you see them, once these sort of statistics make it out in the world, they'll get quoted in every single bloody blog post you'll read, right? But I think...
Or by us.
Yeah, but we're going to get into some of the detail of it in a sec. But one of the things I do like, and I think I've made this point as well when we were talking about previous reports, is I think it's great content marketing when SaaS platforms like Dreamdata share these kinds of insights that they can gather from across their customers. They've got this great content marketing just sitting there to share, and I think this is great. And I referred to it in my blog post about content marketing, educational content marketing. I think this is a great source of this, and every SaaS company, I think, should be looking at the data they hold and thinking about how can the trends and stuff that I can detect here help my customers or my prospects, or maybe get me some PR and get me mentioned on podcasts like Rockstar CMO and things like that, right? So yeah. I think, and by the way, I've just picked this up. There's, and I know I've had Stefan on the show, but Dreamdata have got nothing to do with this. They
are not a sponsor of this show.
Yeah, well,
they're not. We're not on their payroll.
Yeah, this is just.
Although, if they're interested,
it's interesting sponsoring. Yeah, So just to rewind a little bit from the content, I think this is a great thing for any SaaS company to add to their content marketing strategy.
It's much like the report I think we based a episode on from Sixth Sense, where they were talking about how much time people spend doing their research and education on their on solving their problems before they even get revealed on a website, third-party platform, or to your sales team.
Absolutely. And the other nice thing about this, although I'm not sure about whether you get access to the raw data, but it's an ungated piece of content. It's a long blog post, a long article that talks about this, completely ungated. So again, being generous with that content as well. I think that's what we liked about the Sixth Sense report, wasn't it? It was completely ungated and fun. So, and I think that was episode 202, wasn't it? 2 episodes ago, I think, that we talked about that. Cool. All right. So, where do we go now? Oh, yes. I think last week we were talking about how each of the things we're learning about, these sorts of things we pick up, how do they impact our 5 fundamentals? So how does this impact our 5 fundamentals, Jeff?
Well, if just to kind of reiterate, our 5 fundamentals of marketing is the master plan, the research, the story, the campaign, and the machine, otherwise known as marketing operations. And so I think if I just kind of lightly touch on a couple of them, obviously it's like, you need to do the research to understand your entire buyer journey. I mean, that's like the first thing when I talked about earlier about making sure when you're reporting on your progress on campaigns, with products and solutions that have different sales cycles and different journey lengths. So you need to understand, what is that? What is the journey like? When do they typically, how do they, and when do they typically like to engage with a vendor? And then, take that through, from engagement to the opportunity stages. So that's just like, that is certainly a fundamental that this particular topic of the time lag is, makes it really important to do your research. And then from, the perspective of the master plan, so we're kind of stepping up to our first fundamental, you've got to incorporate, OKRs, objectives and key results, that go beyond, sourcing and influencing revenue, because, the issue, here being with this gigantic time lag and what we talked about a couple of weeks ago in terms of the amount of that journey that is like before they're ever going to engage with you, then so what are the things that you do that have an impact in those early stages, which is basically, establishing your brand, your preference, making sure you have, high customer satisfaction. So that sort of ripples through the market. Also enabling, your sales team, because, they're the ones that are not only working on trying to source their own opportunities, but they're going to be, helpful as you actually engage engage these people who are doing their work to try to solve their problems. Those are the levels that work across the journey irrespective of when they finally hit the send me information button or give you a call or chat on your website. And then from a campaign, our campaign fundamental, you need to build the tactics that work across those stages. So we're not only affecting, the journey we're looking for success at all the stages across that journey. How are we influencing those early researchers, providing the education, which we talked about, last week. And then once we engage potential buying group members, how are we advancing them? And then also, how are we helping sales advance opportunities? There's different tactics that work at all of those different stages, and you can report on either externally or to your executive team. You could report on the success of those particular functions.
I feared that was going to be a rabbit hole. We might go and get lost in there. So absolutely. But I think as well, I'm not just going to mention Dreamdata simply because it's a report that we picked up, but I think it also, so you mentioned there that it impacts the research that we do, the master plan we put together in the campaign, but also the machine as well, right? So we've got to make sure that we've got the right systems in place so that we can gather this sort of data, particularly around that very top of funnel and dark funnel area, right? So, and also I think this, and what I found from this is my takeaway, is it underlines the long and short of B2B marketing, right? The thing we talk about all the time. So we're always under pressure to do the short-term stuff, and that's always the thing that seems to be top of mind, the big conversation around B2B, lead gen, demand gen, this quarter, next quarter. And actually, and there's often where the friction is between sales and marketing, but actually a lot of what we're doing is not going to bear fruit for another year. And we've got to make sure that we know, and we need to do that stuff because it's a gift we're giving to ourselves in the future, isn't it? Is all of our marketing we do today, we're going to reap the rewards in a year or so's time. And so I think, it's all about the long and short of it. So what's the next observation that you found from the report?
Well, we've kind of been, talking around this, but in their view of this aggregate data, they were looking at, marketing interactions that happen in Q1. Particularly, they did this study over the span of 2022 to 2023, so those full 24 months, and they were looking at the marketing interactions in Q1. How do they impact, deals by the end of 2023? And they, in the report, they go through the various percentages of, 37% of the deals close within, the end of the first quarter, then an increasing number of deals. Obviously, these are additive until you get to the end of 2023, where they say, oh, look, all of these deals have been, impacted by marketing interactions. And of course, there's a couple of, there's more than a couple of challenges here. So, you don't want to go down too many rabbit holes, but one is, they're basically looking at influence, and then you could ask the question, well, I certainly, a lot of people in sales would, I certainly hope marketing interacted with these people in some way, shape, or form. And so then you kind of get into how are we actually measuring the success? Not just because we've got this time lag, but because we have all these things that are happening over that 24-month period. And so we really got to sort of dig into the details of what's going on over that buyer journey to be able to find out what we're going to report to to our executive colleagues.
That's that leads me on to my next question on this, which was how do we actually measure this? It's a nice report, it gives us all this data and all this shock, but how do we actually measure this stuff?
So I know we often diss the leads and the concept of marketing qualified leads or MQLs because it's been, that's what influencers in marketing have been doing for the past 5 years. Is leads aren't that important. But the thing is that the funnel is still a very valid concept. So the thing is, what we need to do is we need to take an opportunity view of the funnel, not purely the leads, because the leads are those interactions, whether it's somebody filling out a form, going to an event, or just somebody who has popped up on a third party site that you're saying, look, they're in the market and we need to start tracking them. And so, but if we think about the funnel and we start with our total addressable market at the very top, and maybe you've got a target account list, so maybe that's where you want to start and say, okay, now can we measure the number of accounts that are actually presenting signals of intent to buy? Again, that could be from our web property, digital advertising, third party sites like a G2 or whatever. We're starting to gather data that says, oh, out of our total addressable market, our target accounts, we've got a set of accounts that are in market. Okay. Now, once they engage with us, now we've got another stage, which is actually starting to look more like our traditional funnel stage of when people actually let themselves be known, and we would call that a lead or an interaction. And then you can start saying, now we're going into a process that is more familiar, whether we've got BDRs working it or we're moving them onto sales, and we're going through the opportunity process. But all through that process, you're looking at it from the opportunity perspective, not from a lead perspective, and you're looking at how accounts go through that process. And to the executive team, you can start reporting what are the numbers in those stages and what are the conversion rates.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's yes, getting a word in. That's a good point. I mean, absolutely, it's accounts, not leads. And the other thing I think we've been describing on the podcast is it's this, from the 95-5 rule, right? Which is 95% of our market are actually in this big bucket at the top, and it's not really funnel shaped. But as you say, once they become aware, once they have these signals of intent, they are actually in a funnel, right? And also, it's accounts, not leads. Everybody wants to track pipeline and close business, so we're just adding stages at the top, right? For this.
Yeah, you're adding stages at the top, and you're looking at your ability to convert across those stages. So, if you're not engaging in many people, what are you doing at the top of the funnel, to actually, improve that engagement?
Yeah.
And that's what we, report to the executives, and certainly within marketing and perhaps your sales colleagues, your sales operations colleagues, you want to, analyze the success of individual tactics that are geared for that stage conversion. So what's the efficiency of our digital advertising or our own content to get buyers to raise their hands? What's the efficiency of our sales development reps in terms of being able to set meetings or, pull people into the pipeline? And, that gets to getting down into the weeds, but that is the stuff that's helpful to understand that you've acknowledged that there's a buyer journey, and you're moving people through it, and you're looking at how well you're doing at each of those stages.
Yeah, but I mean, this is just to get us back to this sort of time lag concept. I mean, what you've described there is the process one needs to follow. But how does this help us account for the time lag? How does this, what you've just described is exactly what we should be doing, but does this research change that? How does it help us account for that?
I don't think, I'm not sure. Well, I think one of the ways it changes it, and this is certainly something I've been talking to clients about for a long time, is looking at that rolling 12-month view of your those funnel metrics, and maybe it's a rolling 24-month view. Again, depending on what your cycles look like. But, with that rolling view, you can start to tell a story, because reporting is all about telling a story of the success at each of those stages. And so, what's of our success about building and expanding pipeline? What's our, ability to close sales across that rolling period? And, this is where I think this is certainly one of the areas where the CMO and the team need to be able to master their ability to analyze the data that they are able to have, and what's the story we can pull out of this vast pool of data. If the 12-month view doesn't paint the whole picture, then spread it out to 18 or 2 years to see what does paint that picture.
Depending on the product, I think, as you were saying, right? If you've got a fast-moving, cheap product and it's SaaS, then it's going to be much tighter. But again, like you were saying, if it's more of a considered purchase that requires the CEO sign off or something, it's likely to be an 18-month job, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think this is a way of showing in marketing that you're concerned about things that everybody else from the executive team on down to the other functions, they're interested in pipeline and closing revenue. Yeah. So I think that taking this view and being able to take even the long view, it's tough when you're in month one because it's like we're not showing. But once you've got a year's experience, not only can you can show that longer view, but you can start to look at what needs to change to improve those conversions over that long view.
Yeah. So what I'm getting from this then really is it's excellent that Dreamdata have shared this sort of broad brush. This is how it looks for all of their customers, right? But I think that it sounds to me like what we're saying is we need to go in and do the hard work on our own data, right? So it might be that in the general sort of ballpark of what Dreamdata are looking at, and they don't segment by industry or anything like that. You assume it's just B2B. It's 37% of revenue is impacted within a quarter. That number may be very different for you, mightn't it? And it might be very important for you to understand.
Very different.
Yeah, and the 6 month. So it sounds like we need a dashboard that shows how much revenue is impacted this quarter, how long it takes for revenue to be impacted and to work itself out. Because I assume it's like it's fat and it's thinner, or it's thinner and gets fatter, right? It's where. How does that work? And then when it's also about attribution, isn't it? Which is notoriously bloody hard as well, isn't it? When did this thing actually fall into our funnel? So it'd be interesting to dig into the Dreamdata data and see, like, what do they consider to be that first touch? Where did this 190 day clock start? And where does that start with you? So so this is great. Thank you, Jeff. So really, our takeaway here is great. It's obviously great content marketing, great set of numbers for us to look at, but also a model, I think, that we need to apply to our own data, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, cool.
Absolutely.
So our last part of our agenda, so that's our conclusion, is what song are we going with this week, Jeff?
Well, we're talking about time, and there's a great song from one of my favorite, maybe it's our favorite bands, Coldplay, from the 2000s, called Clocks.
Yes.
And I saw this line in the lyrics, and I was like, oh my God, we gotta pull this one out. Cursed missed opportunities. Am I part of the cure, or am I part of the disease? So to all you marketers out there, be part of the cure and don't miss those opportunities.
I love it. So I'll play out with a very small bit of Clocks by Coldplay from 2002. And will you be in the studio next week, Jeff?
I will be here.
I look forward to seeing you.
You're welcome to join me.
Thank you.
Lights go out and I can't be saved. Tides that I tried to swim against brought me down upon my knees. Oh, I beg and plead, singing, come out of things unsaid. Shouldn't I pull off my head? And a trouble that can't be named. A tiger's waiting to be tamed, singing.
Thank you, Jeff. That was a little bit of Clocks by Coldplay. And just to clarify, Stefan from Dreamdata was on episode 103, of course, and not 203, as I mistakenly said at the start there. And I'll include a link to his interview in the show notes, as well as that blog post with the data we referred to called Testing the B2B Time Lag on the Dreamdata blog. Right, it's that time of the week to wind down in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar and join the chief troublemaker at the Content Advisory, Robert Rose, for a cocktail and a marketing thought. Good evening, Roberts. What are you drinking?
Oh, hello, my friend. And wow, what is okay? This is one of my favorites. This is you have really changed over you've got like a 1940s noir detective film going on. I like it. I feel like I should put on my inner sort of Philip Marlowe monologue here and go. He walked into the bar. It was cloudy. There was a dame at the piano. She didn't get it, but he would. So
You do that so much better than me. Yeah.
yes. Well, we have the perfect cocktail
Yes.
associated with this wonderful jazz, smoke-filled noir
I'm glad you
detective
like it.
story. And this is called the drink that we have tonight is called the Bushwick. And it's a New York drink. And it, again, for the second week in a row, it's a rye. I've been really fond of the rye whiskey of late. And if you get your favorite, it's got to be a good rye. Like, don't get a cheap rye. Get a really good rye whiskey for this. And this I mean, this, remember, we're 1940s, 1950s film noir here. You're going to go healthy with your rye whiskey shot here. This is going to be 2 ounces of rye whiskey. So 2 parts rye whiskey. And then you're going to go with a 3/4 part or 3/4 of an ounce sweet vermouth. So this is an important distinction, a sweet vermouth there. I've been really looking at the vermouths lately and sort of really drawing the lines there. But look for a sweet vermouth there.
Yeah.
And then if you want a maraschino cherry in it, do it. I think it doesn't need the maraschino cherry because it's cooler and way more detective-y if you do if you do it without the maraschino cherry. But yeah, a little maraschino cherry if you like, and then a little if you have it. You can go just straight up with the sweet vermouth and the rye whiskey, but if you have it, a little bit of Amaro Lucano or one of your favorite Amaros, you can go just a small. Like maybe a 1/4 part or 1/8 or something like that. Put all that into this goes into a shaker because of course you have to shake this with ice, stir it, shake it, etc. until it's well chilled, and then you want to strain that into. And if you have them, this is what we have for the bar this week, of course, because of the theme. You've got a Nick and Nora Charles glass. And if you don't know what a Nick and Nora glass is, it's a very small, sort of almost like a mini martini glass. But you pour that in there, and it's set for some cool piano, some cool jazz, and a detective story that we might have.
Yeah, but I don't have a small martini glass in this house, but it sounds like something I need to invest in. I don't know where to go with this. So when I look across the bar and we're where are we, by the way? I forgot to. I don't know I don't know the structure of my own show. So where are we taking these drinks in this cool noir?
This was I think so in a classic sort of film noir way. I would say we're going to be in downtown Los Angeles. I just ate it. There's an amazing restaurant downtown in LA that I went to a couple of weeks ago, and it's called the Factory Kitchen, and it's right in the middle of classic old school LA downtown.
Yeah,
and it's the inside of the restaurant isn't very film noir. It's not very deco, but at the same time, it's a great restaurant. So I figure we're downtown LA in one of the classic dive bars down there. And enjoying these Bushwicks.
Oh, splendid. I haven't been to LA for ages. Yes, that sounds fantastic. So, I can't make the segue with the film noir, but when we're in this beautiful place in LA and we're listening to all this cool jazz and conversation in terms of marketing, what's the topic this week?
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about AI strategy. Yes, and because it's only been, I think we have to do it like every hour on the hour these days. Yeah. But here's what I'm coming to the conclusion to, and I'm starting to notice a real tension here as I sort of scan my LinkedIn feed and my threads and looking at all the different news items that are out there about what's going on with and I'm specifically speaking of generative AI here for the most part, which is I'm beginning to think more and more, and this is a hypothesis that I have, is that really there is no such thing as an AI strategy. There shouldn't be an AI strategy, and I think the inability to come to a conclusion on that is what CMOs, CEOs, CIOs are struggling with. And this is because what I'm seeing more and more of is this sort of nuanced tension of basically companies faking it, right? In other words, I saw a post the other day where someone was saying, the CMO has thrown up literally a chat bot on their website to be able to say to their board and their investors that they quote unquote have an AI program going on, right? Yeah. Or you've got another one who I saw someone else post up that basically they're trying to find a chief AI strategist, like literally a C-suite level AI person, because they're trying to show to their constituents, whether it's the board or their or their major leadership, that they're taking AI seriously, and specifically generative AI. And it's this that on one side of the scale, and the other in terms of how few teams have actually and companies have actually integrated Gen AI into their overall workflow and process. And this was something we covered on a webinar a month ago or so now. But the general feeling is that there should be something, right? There should be some miraculous new capability that we now have that we didn't have before. And so you've got this sort of tension of, well, AI is going to take our job, expand our creativity, and inspire us to, get rid of the humans, those pesky humans, by the way, that, are running around and doing stuff. Oh, and by the way, tell us, hey, marketing leaders, tell us which ones of those things is actually going to be, right? Are we going to get rid of people? Are we going to have more of these capabilities that we didn't have before? Are we going to have all these things and do it quick because we feel like we're getting left behind? And what I'm finding is that basically Gen AI is kind of the new car that we didn't ask for, right? What we think about, right? If you think about where we are in marketing right now, with trust, with misinformation, all the things that were happening in 2019, 2020, 2021, the last 5 years with regard to the noise, the tsunami of content, the more content problem, the misinformation, the distrust, all the things that have been going on. If you could have picked the worst time to introduce an artificial way to create content, more content at scale, this would have been it, right?
Yeah.
This would have been the thing. And so the last thing that we would really have needed, as marketers, is this way to artificially create more content and more mediocre content at scale. Yeah. And so you start to, that's the weirdness, right? That's the weirdness that most of these teams are in right now, which is like, well, what do we do with this, right? What do we do that's actually going to make us better to do this? And so we go, all right, well, we can create all this amazing consistency and cohesiveness with AI, and it's going to help us, create content, all this derivative content at scale. And it's like, well, but no, we don't want to contribute our stuff to the public learning model, and it's all going to be out there, and copyright, and by the way, copyright. And then all of a sudden we go, well, okay, we'll build our own learning model. We'll buy one of these tools that we can build our own learning model with. And it's like, yeah, but if you could build your own learning model, you don't have enough data. You don't have enough content to actually build a learning model that does the cool stuff that ChatGPT does. So what do you do about that? And then, by the way, if we do have enough data, it's going to be millions of dollars and take months and months and months for us to do that. So what do we do with all of that, right? Yeah. As a team that's trying to figure this out and, acquiesce to the pressure of what we're supposed to do with this generative AI thing, what do we do with all of that?
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think the first step is that you have to recognize that generative AI is not a strategy. It's an opportunity looking for an application to a strategy.
Yes. Yeah.
And so thinking about that, right? That means it doesn't matter if we hire this chief AI person or people to play out, all the use cases or whatever. You can't make a decision about moving forward with an integrated approach if you don't look at applying the innovation to the approaches that you have.
Yeah.
In other words, you have to understand where the problems are, where the efficiencies are, where the innovation can come in our process before you can apply an innovation like AI in any kind of integrated way. And I'll give you a classic example of this. We had a client come to us a couple of weeks ago who said, our big question is, well, do we rely on a suite like platform like Microsoft Copilot, that's embedded into all the Microsoft tools, and should that be our AI creation solution? Or should we buy one of these off the shelf sort of custom tools to help us create brand consistency and translation management and content creation and workflow automation, et cetera? And my answer to that question was, well, I have two more questions. What process are you trying to innovate? Right? What's the strategy you're trying to innovate? More importantly, do you understand the current approach well enough to even understand where the innovation might create value? And this is the fascinating thing of where we find ourselves, is that AI innovation is looking for a strategy to optimize. And if we don't know the strategy that we're trying to optimize, it can't optimize anything. So if you show me a business that understands their smart content strategy, a smart content process, their operations and marketing, now I'll show you a company that is either prime or already integrating AI in an appropriate way.
I love that. I mean, I love the way you frame that. And I mean, this idea that somebody would hire a chief AI strategy officer, that guy is going to wander around that business with a hammer looking for nails, right? And that may not be, that's totally wrong. Like, somebody's trying to build a shed that needs screws or whatever. Terrible
that's right.
analogy, but and I think that's so perfect. And it's this idea of actually, and isn't so much of what we talk about is basically getting down to understanding what your process is and what's really going on, and then let's look at this new doohickey, whatever kind of thing it is. Right? It just seems to be the basic advice right now.
Yeah, it's the equivalent. I mean, looking for your AI strategy is the equivalent of looking for your telephone strategy. Right? What's your strategy for telephone? Right? It's like, what do you mean? Or computing. What's your computing strategy as a marketing team? That's the equivalent. And it's like, no. You apply those innovations. You apply the innovation of telephone or computing to the things that you do. Right? How are they going to innovate your sales process, your content process, your, customer service process, and if you don't understand those processes, which so many, when it comes to content, so many businesses don't understand content at all, right? And again, this gets back to sort of the original challenge, which is, well, this is the thing that we didn't need. Nobody asked for this. Nobody was like, oh my God, I wish we had some way to artificially create more average content so that we can do it at scale, right? It's like, scale has not been a problem, right? Scale has not been a problem for marketing teams. They've been able to create more and more and more crap content. You don't need a tool to do that or automate that. The value theoretically should be in the tool helps you do all of the things that you need to do so that you can make room for all of the cool, interesting, creative stuff that you don't want AI to do. But in order to understand that gap, you've got to understand what it is that you're doing.
And where it can fit into the process. And I think a lot of people are talking about AI being like a creative partner almost, that it needs to be used in other ways than generative content. And I love the way that you're describing what I'm picturing here is, hey, I've got a solution that creates more shitty B2B content. Don't worry, we've already got that covered. Welcome to B2B.
Right. That's right. It's this, here's this magical new way that you can write 10 more blog posts a week. We could do that. I could do that. I don't need a tool to do that.
Especially if you just want the shit generic ones. I've got loads of those.
I can hire it. There's services that do this, right?
I love this. Thank you, Robert. So where are people going to find content that is none of those things? is absolutely.
They're going to
written
find
by
that at
humans.
contentadvisory.net, the
Splendid.
place where we're putting all of our human-generated nonsense or wonderfulness, depending on your point of view, I suppose.
Splendid. And how's the evolution of the contentadvisory.net going? Is it the final version?
It's gone very well. I mean, basically we took our website down from, I think, 30 or 40 pages of here's what we do, here's how we do it, here's what we do, here's how we do it, here's the other thing we do, and here's how we do it, and here's another thing we do, and here's how we do it. And we basically brought it down to 3 pages and said, we do this, this, and this, and if you want to know more, just talk to us. Otherwise, here's a bunch of content that we have, right?
Here's the help button. I love it. All right, and when people spin the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you?
They're going to find me on LinkedIn and Threads primarily. Although I would invite everybody to join us, my friend Joe and I, on our little nonsense podcast called This Old Marketing, which you can go subscribe to on your favorite podcatcher.
Yeah, and also on the tubes, right? You've got YouTube videos and YouTube Shorts going on. So
You're
doing all the things.
I mean, we got all the things. We're actually now sort of switching the strategy to be, we're really more of a YouTube show that has an audio version available rather than an audio podcast with a YouTube version available. So we're really switching over and trying to become much more of a show that is multi-platform. So we'll see how that continues to go. TikTok, by the way, really interesting. It's been a very, very interesting evolution, if you will, of YouTube Shorts, and TikTok has been really productive for us.
That's fantastic. Well,
which I would not have guessed.
No, I think, and especially for the sort of business audience that we have, I'm still a holdout on just going to video, let alone doing all the other things. So unless listeners really, really insist, and I'm sticking to audio for now.
Yeah,
I think because of the editing.
I'll tell you this: the advertisers don't recognize it yet. I mean, we are, the shows that are doing this are well ahead of the buyers. In this market, because if you continue to get inquiries into your advertising on your podcast, it's very rare that they want all of your channel statistics. They just want your audio downloads. So there's still a lot of work. There's still a very big evolution going on here.
Yeah, but I think you're doing the right thing. I mean, it's the prevailing advice at the moment is to move to video, and particularly with the juggernaut like YouTube. I mean, they're putting a lot of effort into podcasts and stuff, and now they'll take your RSS feeds and all that stuff. So it's a real change, isn't it? Anyway, we've digressed slightly. So most important for me, and maybe we can chat about this in the bar at some point. Will you be in the bar next week?
Of course, and I hope let's see this to who done it.
Thank you, Robert. Like any new doohickey or tool or thing they give us in marketing, you need a strategy first, not a solution looking for a problem. So some really good points there about AI. So that's a wrap on episode 205 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. I've been your host, Ian Truscott. Thanks to Jeff and Robert for sharing their insight. And you can find a link to them, their work, and the things we discussed in the show notes on rockstarcmo.com, along with our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes. And thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track, and jiving along with us. I would love to hear from you, so please say hello, or drop us a rating or review in your favourite podcast app, or just keep listening. I'm glad you're here. Next week, Jeff and I will be diving into revenue operations and what this means for marketing leaders. And Robert will be back in the virtual bar with a fresh marketing thought. Until then, have a great week. And I hope you again join us here next week on Rockstar CMO FM.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.